Give me 1 second just to make sure everything's okay. Okay, you can all see my screen? Okay, I think you can all see it. Okay, so we're going to be doing geometric logos for today, and then Friday we're going to have a continuation. Today we're working with 2D geometry, which is basically just lines today. That's what we're going to be focusing on. So just to give you guys an example of some simple logos that involve simple geometry really, is that these are two simple logos, one with parabolas, one with lines and some circles. So just start thinking of logos you might know from companies that have simple logos that can help stimulate what you might want to do later on. But today we're working on a line project. So as I said, or if you just came in, we're going to need graphing paper, a ruler from the packet we sent you, this ruler packet. We're going to need colored pencils and then a pencil just to draw your lines. So just make sure you have all 4 of those items before we get started, and then we'll get into our project for the day. So today's project, we are going to be doing what's basically called a mosaic. So you're going to be following a basic set of formulas and create a line mosaic. But to make sure that we understand this, we have to understand the math behind it. And once we learn these formulas for each line, we'll write the formula near each line, and then we'll just make sure we understand what they look like. So let's get started. I'm going to teach you what basically a line formula is. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's a pretty standard formula that you'll see very, very often throughout school and just everywhere. Y equals mx plus b. It is a simple line formula where m is the slope, b is the y-intercept, which is the y-intercept is the point at which the line meets the y-axis. So if you look at the graph, we're using the equation y equals 2x plus 3. If you notice that 2x, if you see the slope is 2, because the 2x, it goes up 2 over 1, 2 over 1, that's the slope. And the starting point, which is b, is positive 3, which is why I pointed out the arrow on the y-axis, which is why it's 3. So that's the standard line formula. If you are going to have a little trouble understanding what the slope is, you might want to quickly write this down, or the y-intercept, but I'll still reinforce it. That way you guys can remember it for the future when we keep going on. So I'll give you a second if you want to write anything down from this slide for later on. Awesome. Okay. So something before we start. We're going to go over some basic sets of rules to lines that might have not been covered in the last slide. Any negative in front of a slope means that it's going to go towards left top to right bottom. In the previous side, if I go back one, hold on, let me go back. This one has a positive slope of 2, so it goes from left bottom to right top. A negative slope will be a flip. It goes from left top to right bottom. So when you see that negative in front of the slope, that's an easy thing to remember. Then another basic rule is y equals any fraction x plus b. When you have a fraction, you go up and down the numerator and left and right the denominator. That's just a basic one. If we saw in the 2, since 2 is also known as 2 over 1, you're going up 2 over 1. But if it's 1/4, you go 1 up, 4 to the right. That's another one. Another basic rule, y equals mx minus b. That just means that the Y-intercept is going to be below the x-axis, so it's going to be a negative. 2 more rules. Y equals any number. If you ever see y equals 3, y equals 4, y equals 5, that just means you find y equals 4 or 5 on the y-intercept, and you draw a horizontal line. That's just a flat line going across. It doesn't go up and down, it goes across infinitely. And then x equals any number. Similarly, if it's x equals 2, 3, 4, 5, it is a vertical line. So you'd find that on the x-axis, and it goes up and down infinitely. Those are the basic rules that we are going to be encompassing in this project. If you are confused, go ahead and chat me. I'm more than happy to explain it further. And if you want to write anything down, we're using all of this in the next little bit. If you're good, I'm going to give you a minute to, if you need to write anything down. Otherwise, I will continue on and we'll get started on the project. Alrighty. So I am giving you these formulas. There are 9 formulas on your left on the page. And we are going to begin to draw each of these formulas on a graph. That's why you need your graphing paper. And that's why I asked you to have your pencils and the ruler. When you finish all of these, and I have not called time, you can add as many other formulas as you want. But to keep it simple, I'm leaving it at these 9. It's a mix of positive slopes, negative slopes, a mixture of, it's going to be a mixture of fractions, of y equals a number, x equals a negative number. It's definitely a mixture. So that's why I said if you need anything, we can always cover it back when I put the basic rules. Or if you got it down, you can get started. And this is the formulas you're using for the next. I'm giving you 10 minutes basically to work on this, start drawing them out. And if you need help, please chat me. We'll go over it once we have what you believe is a basic set down. Got it? There are a lot of people joining right now, so I'll probably have to go over it a little bit more. So I'm going to leave the screen up. For everyone who just joined, I went over some formulas, and we're doing what's called a line mosaic. I'll quickly show you what it is. So I'm going to go away from the screen real quick for anyone who's writing it down. A line mosaic is basically this, where you see just the graph and you're drawing lines to make it look all nice, and you're going to color it in later, but you're drawing in formulas to create a line mosaic. You might want to draw the X and Y axis as shown in this example right here, the line formula. That way you have a starting point. So when you get the graph paper, I highly suggest breaking it down with a ruler, the axes with a Y axis and an X axis. That way it's really easy to understand where you're putting each point. And so this is the simple formula. If you didn't get to see it, y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. These are the simple rules. Again, I'm just leaving it here for one more second for anyone who just came in. And then after this, I'll leave up the formulas for a good solid 8 to 10 minutes for you to work on, because I want you guys to have enough time just to relax and draw everything you want to draw. For anyone who came in, these are just some important rules. I'll probably end up, once you guys write down the 9 formulas on the back, I'll come back to this page. Okay, I'm gonna go to the formulas. There. So I highly suggest everyone to quickly write down all 9 of these on a piece of paper, a sticky note, whatever you have, or even the graphing paper. It's okay if you write it on the graphing paper on the back. Just write these down, and then we're going to start drawing each line onto the graph. So I'll let it be right now. I'll let you start drawing. I'll let you start creating these lines on the graph. And again, if you have a question, please chat. I'm not sure if I clarified everything. I know some people came in a little late, so I don't want to rush anything. And once you've taken a look at these lines, go ahead and start drawing them. I'll be doing it with you. I've already created my mosaic, which you'll see in a couple slides, but just take the time to start graphing. Get your ruler out and start understanding the slopes and the fractions, everything to create this mosaic. What I'm going to do to make it easier for anyone who came in late is I'm going to pull up the other screen so that way everyone has the basic formulas, the more intense formulas when it comes in handy. And I'm going to quickly chat any all the formulas to everyone so that way you have it there, and that way I don't have to go in between slides. So I'll quickly type them out. Alrighty, so if you need the formulas, they're all in the chat. I'm going to get started and help you with the first one. That way you have a starting point. So I'm going to quickly break out my ruler if you haven't done that already. And that way we can just start off the first one all together. And I'm just going to start off with the axes. That way we have the x-axis and the y-axis. So if you can see, I drew 2 lines. That's my axis. I'm pretty sure you can see that. And the first formula that I gave you was y equals 3x plus 2. the easiest way I think about it is I immediately see the y-intercept and I know to go right there immediately, which, as I said, b is the +2. So you're going to go to the y-axis and go to 2, 0, or sorry, 0, 2, which is just going up on the y-axis 2 points. So I'm going to make a very large dot. If you can see this dot, that is your y-intercept. So that's the first thing I suggest you do with any of these problems is locate your y-intercept. And then you understand that 3x is your slope, 3 is the slope, or 3/1. That means the slope is going to go up 3/1. Oh, shoot. And once I created a couple points, I'll use my, I'll see if I can do this. That way you guys can see. I used my ruler to quickly draw my line. And then I'm going to just take it up all the way, which is going to be easiest for the mosaic. Just like that and all the way down. Oops, that was not pretty. And that's going to be your first line. If you start off with this, that is the first equation to start off the mosaic. I'll do the second one with you. That way you have an example of a fraction. I'll probably do the first 3 or 4 with you, and that way you have a basis of what to do for the rest of it. So the next equation, if you've already done this, no rush, you can take your time. I'm just going to get started on the next one. So this is what it looks like. Oof, real quick, I don't know if it was Brent or Daniel who said, I don't get it, but if you want to chat me or unmute and tell me what you don't get, I would be happy to clarify. Do we put any number for x? So for, I don't know if you're referencing the y-intercept, but the y-intercept always just stays on this y line. So whenever it's b, it's always going to stay on this line just for your single point. And then when you create your slope, whether it's a fraction, whether it's a whole number, you're always going to go up and over somewhere and down and over, creating that line. So you technically don't put anything for x, I guess. You don't put anything for the x-axis except when it goes through when you create the line. But when I gave you guys a point, it was the point that came up on the y-axis, and then I created some other points when I created the slope. Because in the first problem, the slope was, if I remember correctly, it was 3. So I went up 3 and over 1, and I went down 3 and over 1 to create a positive line slope. Did that make any sense? I can explain it again in other words. So let me know if that clarified anything. And I'll give you a minute to do what I did. I'll keep holding it up so you have an example. Now, one important thing I want to clarify as I show on the basic rules is remember that this formula is a +3. I put in the chat, it's the first formula, if you need to see what it is, y equals 3x plus 2. Since 3x is positive, you're going to start from the bottom left and go positive up to the top right. That's how I remember what a positive slope is. So just make sure you're going that way. Oh no. Brennan Daniel, for the lines, is it the slope that's confusing or is it the y-intercept that's confusing? Can you chat me that one? That way I can explain it. Both? Okay. So when we look at, I'm going to break it down real quick for, it's probably confusing for a lot of people. It took me a while to understand it. So I'm going to quickly go back to the other screen. That way we have an understanding of what's best. Okay, so a simple line formula where y equals mx plus b, that's a formula that's standard for any problem. You're going to have this forever. Oh, you get it. Okay, I'm just going to explain it real quick just to make sure if there's any other confusion for anyone else. Y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope, where I gave you the example of 2x plus 3. 2 is the slope, and that since it's positive, you're going to the left bottom, to the right top, going up 2 over 1, and down 2 over 1 because it's a positive slope. No worries, I'm going to keep explaining it. That's a slope. So when you see a number in front of an x, anytime you see a line formula like this, that's what you immediately go, oh, it's slope, okay? So in this case, 2 is your slope. You're going up 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. That's where you see your dots. Now the y-intercept, which is a big term, I understand if that's slightly confusing. It's in simple terms, it is just one point that you see on this y-axis, this very straight line down the middle. That's called y. You see how there's a dot right in the center, right above the 2. That's 3, and that's because at the end of this this line formula, there's a +3. That's how we know that worked out. That happens with any equation you get with the line formula, that there's a slope like this, and there's a y-intercept, or just a y term. I know y-intercept could be a confusing phrase. Hopefully that clarified just a bit. I know all these next little bit is probably very confusing if the first little bit is a little confusing for you, but we'll get through it. To make it easier, I'm going to hold it up one more time. That way you can see my line. If you still don't get it, that way we can work it out together. So you saw, oh wait, am I holding upside down? I am holding it upside down. This is what the line looks like. We're starting at a +2, and then, yes, we're starting at a +2, up 3 over 1, down 3 over 1. And that's your first line. That would be your first one. Okay, I'll give you a second to do your first line if you haven't done it. No worries if it's just going to take you a bit. This is also recorded. That way you can do it later if you want to. It's a concept that you'll have for a very long time. I still use this formula in 12th grade, and you'll probably use it starting very early. It's a formula you got to get to know. Alrighty, I'm going to get started on the second formula. Y equals negative 1/2 x minus 6. The first thing I'm going to tell you to do is look for your minus 6. Oh, great question about how do we label them. I was just going to put them, I'll put it right here. Put it on the on top of the line right here. Y equals 3x plus 2. You see how I labeled just writing the equation onto the line? That's what I would do to label them. Awesome. Great question. Okay. So again, the second formula, y equals negative 1/2 x minus 6. The first thing we do is look at the minus 6 and understand that this is 0 right here. We're just going to go down 6 grid points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At 6, I'm going to make a dot. And that's, again, what is the y. And we're going to start from there. Once you have that point made, I don't know if you can see it. I feel so bad if you can't see it. Once we have that point right here, we're now creating the slope. Now, this is a tricky slope. This is something I have on the before we get started. The negative slope means we're going to have a line that goes in the opposite direction of the line we just created because there's a negative in front of the slope number. So let's get started on the slope. It is a fraction. It's negative 1/2. That means we're going to go up 1 and over 2. So I'll make the first point, up 1 over 2. Right there, that's your first point to create a slope. And then we're going to go down 1 over 2. That's another point to form on our slope. Once you've done that, you can take your ruler and just create your line across the page, which shows that equation. That would be it. And you would label it as so. Y equals negative 1/2 x minus 6. Chat me again if you need help on this one. This one's a difficult one because it encompasses several difficult points. It has a couple formulas and basic rules that I taught you towards the end, which can be a little difficult. I'll give you 1 minute to finish up that line and then I'll help you with the next one. That way we can keep going because I would love to get to the point where you can just kind of relax and color everything in. That way it's a little more relaxing. I know this one's a little bit high stress because we're learning a ton of formulas right now. Again, I'll fold it up one more time. This is what your graph should look like right now on your graphing paper. And I'm just going to explain one more time, just in case you're having trouble with the slope, what a fraction does. For example, for this one, for the 1/2, you take the numerator, which if you don't know what a numerator is, it's just the number on top of a fraction. So I'm just going to quickly go to the next slide. The second formula, this on the top is the numerator, and the one on the bottom is the 2, which is the denominator, meaning you're going up 1 and over 2. And again, if you have any questions, please chat. I'm already chatting with a couple people to clarify before we move on to the next one. I know it's a lot, so I can understand why it's a lot. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. If you're noticing that this is a little bit more difficult with all these rules, I highly suggest maybe taking out the fractions. If you're thinking it's not the best thing to keep going into the fractions or the opposite directions, keep going in one direction like this and create different slopes. You can use if you're using the exact same, just use the exact same point that you had before, which is the +2, and start making different angles this way. And you're just going to create a page of these so you understand what a basic line is. If you're having trouble with some of the other concepts and you don't want to do the negatives, if you don't want to do the fractions, it's a little too out of the comfort zone, go ahead and base it off of this line right here using the same point and create different lines like that. You don't have to go off the formulas I gave you. I gave you some very complex formulas for the basic lines. So if it's a little too much, go ahead and take your time on doing a different set of formulas. Just by the end, have a nice graph paper full of lines. That way you can do something later with it. But I'm still going to go through and help everyone with the other formulas. Again, if it's a little difficult, base it off the first formula I gave you and just create more like that. It's okay if it's a little difficult right now. Okay, I'm going to go to the third problem. That way it's we can move on to the next one. So the next one is y equals 4. One second there. Okay. Y equals 4. That is a simple one where you just go up 4 on the y-axis, and you're going to create a point as so. One, 2, 3, 4. You're going to create a point right there. Y equals 4. And you're going to take a line and create a line across like this. This is one of the easy formulas where it's just a line across like that. Y equals 4. Where it infinitely only sees 4 on the y-axis and experiences horizontally going across forever. And by the way, if the graphing paper is making the grids or just the paper in general is making it a bit confusing, you can use plain paper. It's going to be slightly more difficult to point everything on the plain paper. That's why I personally use graphing paper for this. But then again, if you feel like that's better, go ahead and just use plain paper or the graphing paper, whichever one works for you. Again, my comfort zone or what I like is graphing paper. Do what you believe is going to help you understand this the best. And once again, that line across is y equals 4. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next formula. Again, if you don't want to do the next formula, it is overwhelming for you, go ahead and stop here. Just stop, maybe add a couple random lines. That's okay. It's a lot of formulas. So if you are done with the first one, the second one, and the third one, or if you're just done by the first one, add random lines. It's okay. Don't worry about it. The next formula we're going to go over that I had was x equals -3. The easy way to remember this is going over 3. Since it's negative, you're going to go this way towards the left. You're going to go towards the left 3 and mark a point on the graph, like so. That's your point right there. And you're going to go up and down. That's what x equals. X equals -3. This line I created is the next formula that we are doing together. Alrighty, so I'm going to let you finish off the rest of the formulas if you like, or draw your own lines. It's okay if you draw your own, and if you want to keep doing what I did where I showed you the formulas, go ahead, and there's another 5 on that formula sheet that I have up here, and keep drawing it. And if you don't like these formulas, you are stressed out or anything, go ahead and just draw some random straight lines on this graph. That way you can participate in the last little bit. So I'm going to give you probably about 5 to 10 minutes to just finish doing some more lines. No. I can't do that. I'm not muted, by the way. You are muted? No, I'm not. And if you guys can, if you've created enough lines and you're happy with it, can you please chat me? That way I have an idea of where we're at regarding the lines. I had a little bit more to the lesson, but I think I'm going to save the last little bit for Friday to make it easier on everyone. So please, for anyone working on this, please chat me where you're at in the project so far. So I'm not getting a lot of chats from everyone. I'm just gonna assume we're all okay. I hope we're all okay. I'm gonna move on to the next little portion, which is the fun part. This is what your lines should have looked like if you did it the way if you used my formulas, if you want to quickly compare. This is if you ever need to see what a line looks like, there is a program online called Desmos, and you're just able to visually see what these lines look like. So these are all the equations I gave you. If you want to quickly compare your sheet with mine, or if it looks completely different, that's okay. Some people drew some other lines, and that's okay. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to skip over this part. We're going to go right to the coloring. We'll go back to that another day. So go ahead, and we're just going to start coloring in your mosaic. I will do it with you, where you just color in every box that is separated by a line. So I'll show you real quick what I mean. Take out a colored pencil. Choose a color. And you're just gonna, for example, you see how this box is separated. I'm just gonna color this in like so. And that's the first part of the mosaic. These lines are separating it, and therefore I'm just coloring it in that way. And you're coloring in every box on your sheet. So this is gonna be a relaxing part, hopefully not high stress, because you're just coloring now. So go ahead, I didn't do all the equations, but I'm just gonna draw some random lines. That way I can kind of color in a mosaic with you. And go ahead, just break out your color pencils. We have 13 minutes left of the session, so I'm just gonna give you free range with the coloring. Take your time and just color in everything. And if you have any questions regarding any of the mathematics and the problems, go ahead and chat me and just enjoy the relaxing coloring, I guess. And quickly, I just wanted to say, for the people who were a little confused by this, it took me it took me a very, very long time to understand this. And you never really get away from this formula, especially in high school. You are continuously using this. So it's okay to not understand it right now or to feel confused by a couple of these that we did. Just know that it takes some time. Over a short time, it will get a lot easier just by noticing patterns and just remembering what some of these, what the terms meant. And hopefully when we come in next year, if you come in person, I want to do something with this so that way you can actually in person talk about this. It's very difficult, unfortunately, to do it virtually. So again, don't be completely overwhelmed by it. It's understandable. Just like how the Rubik's Cube might have been a little overwhelming yesterday, this one is similar where it takes some time to understand the formula and all the concepts around it. If you've been coloring for a bit, you're going to notice your mosaic is starting to come together. You're trying to fill up all the squares. That way it's a full colorful page. And since we're running out of time, try and color in the last little bit you can. That way you have something done. And if you want to finish it during a break, maybe, or later tonight, whenever you want, or you don't even have to finish it if you don't want to, but just go ahead and keep adding in the color. Alrighty, so I didn't personally finish. I'm hoping everyone was close to finishing, but I just have a couple closing remarks that I have to say before I let you out for a break. So let me stop share and just see you guys. Okay. So today's lesson was difficult, a little difficult. I can understand that. On Friday, I am going to change my lesson plan a little bit and make it a different lesson. That way we can kind of go over what we did today in simpler terms and then add a little bit onto it, but that way we don't completely go on to a complicated topic without understanding everything we did today. So if you feel frustrated and you don't understand what we did today, I will do a little bit more on Friday with you and change it up a bit. That way it's not all lines and doing this, but it's still going to be some coloring, some relaxing parts. That way it's not all stressful mind math, all that stuff. So you are going to have 30 minutes of a break after this before you have to come back on and have another lesson. Gabriella has the next lesson with you. And yeah, so this was your first line lesson. We're not going to completely do what I had planned on Friday. We're going to change it up just a bit, but still be fun. Dave, do you have, I don't know if Dave's not in here. No worries. But any other questions before we head out? Awesome.